listening have been in touch with me over the weeks and months we've talked about this to say you want the police to get tougher. You want to see the police deal with this in a much more hands-on fashion. Ignore the, funnily enough, PC brigade and just get on with PCing. So we saw on Friday that the Met Police have upped their tactics to deal with these moped gangs, that they are now literally ramming suspects off their bikes, sometimes even if they're not wearing helmets. You can see the video, lbc.co.uk, lbc.co.uk, to see the videos of the Met Police officers driving into the back of these moped gangs. Well, today we hear that there are senior police figures who are actually condemning Scotland Yard for this new tactic. They say the dangerous driving may well risk leaving officers vulnerable to prosecution. The Police Federation saying although it broadly supported the Met's tactics, the measures breach current legislation. They say their officials are meeting Policing Minister Nick Hurd this week to discuss better protection for pursuit officers. There's a feeling that the police put themselves at greater risk by doing this because of the law, and that the law ought to be changed. But there are also suggestions that this tactic is far too tough, far too dangerous for both the police officer and the person involved, and the police shouldn't be doing it at all. I wonder what you make of that. 0345 6060 973. When you saw those videos the other day of the police crashing into those suspected moped criminals, did you cheer or did you think, oh, that is way too far, that is far too dangerous, and actually it's probably unnecessary? 0345 6060 973. Peter Kirkham is a former Met Police detective inspector. Evening to you, Peter.
Good evening.
Is it a dangerous tactic?
No.
Is it too dangerous?
You and the rest of the media are using emotive terms like running over and ramming into and high speed. It's tactical contact, and it's when an opportunity arises for a low-speed contact where there's nobody in the firing line for where the bike might go, and at low speed it's not going to go very far anyway. If you watch the videos, the bike doesn't go any magnificent distance at all. It goes a metre or two, and the people just sort of bounce off the ground and set off running. It's not a dangerous tactic done properly. It's done under control, and it's done quite deliberately.
There's no doubt that someone being hit with a car, even at relatively low speeds, and being, made to go up onto the bonnet of the car before coming off, whilst driving, that is dangerous.
It is, but you're not hitting the person. You're nudging the bike. You're nudging the bike so they come off. The person still
goes off, exactly. So there is still some danger to the person who is having their bike nudged. And clearly that is clearly upsetting the Police Federation, who say, well, maybe police officers aren't covered for this.
No, that's not what's upsetting the Police Federation. I speak to the Police Federation regularly. They support the tactic totally, and it's the reason, we've not had the tactic is why we've got a moped crime epidemic, because they think they can get away with it. The difficulty is that the law is out of sync with what's happening, and I think it's a wrongly decided case. It's case law that's taken us there, and what it basically, and it's nothing to do with pursuits, it's to do with dangerous driving generally, so it applies to police, fire and ambulance and anyone else in blues and twos, and it applies to response driving as well as pursuit driving, and it says in the definition of careless and dangerous driving, both of which are offences, the standard will be that of an ordinary, careful, competent driver. Now, before this case in 2009, everyone assumed that meant, you sort of read into it, of the category involved. So a careful, competent police driver with advanced driving training in a marked vehicle, blah, blah, blah. So everybody took that, sort of read that into it, and the case law decision said, oh, no, it's Mrs. Miggins going down the supermarket. So every response drive, let alone every pursuit drive, is de facto careless and or dangerous driving as the law stands. Now, for years, the Federation have been trying to get legislation through. The government haven't been interested. There's a private members' bill that ironically on Friday at a time again and won't come up again till March. Personally, I don't think that totally deals with the whole issue. But it needs the law to catch up. Because we've got two things here. We've got the law that allows the use of reasonable and necessary force to detain people, to prevent crime and to protect people. And that is what the officers will be doing, just using a vehicle to do that. If the person was running down the street or cycling down the street, they'd rugby tackle them, they'd take them off, they'd trip them over. And they'd get the same sorts of injuries that would be expected. And no one would bat an eyelid about that. But because of vehicles being used, then you come into the is it dangerous and careless driving, and that's what the Federation are worried about, that the law as it stands leaves officers vulnerable to prosecution.
So would you, if you're in charge, Peter, let me put you in charge of the Met Police, would you encourage, knowing the law, knowing the risk that officers run, would you encourage them to use this tactic?
I personally would explain to them what the law is and say, if you do this, you run the risk of the IRPC and the CPS prosecuting you.
That's
now, there's a memorandum of understanding with the CPS saying that they're not going to do it unless it's really outrageous, because no one's asking for a defence of being dangerous. No one's saying the police should be able to be dangerous and get away with it. But what they're saying is, when they're doing this and they're doing it as part of their duties and they're highly trained and they've got approval and it's all been risk assessed, and it didn't help with Diane Abbott coming out the other day making it they just decided to do it off their own bat with no risk assessment or anything. It's all risk assessed. They have to get authority. There's only certain officers can do it, and so it's all done very carefully. What we need to do is we need to sort out the law. Now, I personally, if I was a chief, I'd say go for it. I will back you 100% if it happens, and I will volunteer myself to aid and abet you. Say I'm aiding and abetting his dangerous driving if he's dangerous driving, and put myself in
so
the
you
dock.
put the chief in the firing line.
Absolutely.
I've been out with the Met Police whilst they've been taking on these moped gangs, Operation Venice, and it was fascinating to go around in the car and watch the police work in teams to try and stop these people. And I have to say, looking at this tactic, I'm delighted that they're using this. I think this has to be the way forward. These moped crimes, these gang members are abhorrent, some of the crimes they're committing, and they're clearly at one crime almost every half an hour in London this year. They're causing huge problems. So what would you say, Peter, to someone who says it's too dangerous?
Don't be such a snowflake. Listen to what's actually happening. Don't over-exaggerate it. Listen to what people tell you and leave the police to do their job professionally without telling them what to do. Lots of people tell the police what not to do. Nobody gives them an alternative. If you've got someone that's failing to stop you, the answer's in their hands. Stop. Then they're not at risk at all.
Peter, I know we didn't ask you beforehand, but people have been ringing in whilst you've been talking. I wonder if I could put a caller on who's got a point to make directly to you.
Go on.
Is that all right? Malcolm's in Baker Street. Malcolm, you're on with Peter Kirkham. Go ahead.
Hello, I'd just like to ask Peter, you can have all the trained policemen in your world in the tactical pursuits, and they can all be professional, advanced, qualified drivers, but there's one thing you seem to forget, Peter, and that's the art of human error, my lad. What happens if your driver makes a mistake that they can't account for, and one little lad is on his moped, falls the wrong way, cracks his head off the pavement, and then is dead, all for the sake of a mobile phone? Now, I'll tell you what the problem is. I've got no problem with you lot chasing. I've got a lot of time for the police, especially in West Yorkshire. But I'll tell you something, you should give these people who steal the telephones, and I know it's not your job, it's the court's job, but give them 10 years, never mind 6 months, and you'll soon stop that crime wave.
Absolutely agree with you. There should be a specific new offence of engaging the police in a pursuit. At the moment, failing to stop for police has a maximum 6-month penalty, which is ridiculous. Engaging in a pursuit, it should have a minimum of 5 and maximum of 14 or life or something, and certainly should be life disqualification. So I absolutely agree with you. The courts, with the government and the courts, need to sort out the sentencing of this, but we are where we are, and the law is what it is. Of course, accidents might happen, but accidents might happen doing anything.
Peter, I'm sorry, let me speak in. That's not an accident if you deliberately, tactically, what you've described, hit an offender or an alleged offender on a moped or a bike and cause that person to fall off, injure himself or death. That's not an accident, that's a deliberate manoeuvre, Peter.
No, the accident is the extent of the injury, because the tactic used properly and the tactic used under control would normally lead to minor injuries. But you can't, obviously, you can't...
Hang on, Malcolm, let Peter finish. Let Peter finish. He's just explaining it. Malcolm.
You can't take out the intervening cause that something unexpected happens, but that happens if you rugby tackle someone in the street.
Quite.
That happens in anything that the police do. And the bottom line is, if they don't want to be at risk, there's a very simple answer: stop.
Malcolm, we'll leave it there. Thank you. Peter, final question from me. It's going to have to be a brief answer. Do you think this is the start of the police starting to get a bit tougher, not just on moped gangs, but also violent crime more generally?
I really hope so, because the criminological evidence says that people are deterred from committing crime if they think they're going to get arrested. It's not get caught. It's not the penalty at the end of the day that they're thinking about. That's too far away. And so we need to see the police using robust tactics. Stop and search in relation to knife crime done properly. Yes, it's got to be done properly, and we need to make sure it's done right. This sort of thing with moped crime. I was on the flying squad in the 90s. We had robust tactics, taking the robbers out on the pavement, coming out of banks, and we killed armed robbery in a decade.
Peter Kirkham, grateful for your time tonight, former Met Police Commander. 0345